One of the things in your presentation today that struck me was you spoke about us being in what you called an age of discontinuity, of transformation, and you spoke about how PC, reasonable approaches are, in a sense, impotent in the face of the challenges we're confronting, and about the need for more radical approaches. So first, if I could just ask you briefly to speak a little bit about what you mean by us being in an age of discontinuity.
Well, discontinuity is a well-known concept in science, in the complex systems. It's expressed in a non-linearity of its development. In other words, a trend that up till now moved fairly smoothly forward can suddenly break down. When it breaks down, it's because it reaches the limits of its stability, of the system's limits of stability. And at that point is what in science is called a bifurcation. In the popular parlance now, this is called the tipping point.
Right.
You know, then something happens. All kinds of things are possible except the status quo. I mean, you can do all kinds of other things, but you can't maintain the system the way it was. The system either breaks down or breaks through to another state. It's a discontinuous development. That doesn't mean development doesn't keep going. It keeps going unless the system becomes extinct, which is also possible. But it goes in another way. It has to find a different way of operating.
Okay.
So society is in a period of a macro shift, a shift of simultaneously economic, social, political, and ecological. All its elements together are undergoing a shift, which means we need new thinking. And here I think is the relevance of Einstein's quote, you know, a quote from Einstein. He says you can't solve a problem with the same kind of thinking in which the problem arose.
Right.
So you need new thinking, new consciousness, if you like, a new spirit or new spirituality.
So can you speak some about the kind of radical approach you feel is required to confront the challenges that we're facing now?
Well, it's radical in the sense that it recognizes that a piecemeal approach and an old rationality doesn't work. You can patch up the system, but if you patch it up, you just prolong the current situation, where the crisis will deepen. And all the indicators, all the linear indicators are negative. In other words, you look at the combination of poverty, of ecological degradation, of the distribution of wealth in the world, and power in the world, concentration of one of the elements and the growth of the other element, together with the increasing pollution of air, water, and land. All of this is untenable. Any linear projection that goes more than 10 years and attempts to project the current trends into the future and the understanding that the same thing will happen in the future as happened in the past, it just continues the same way. Anything like this reaches a point where human life becomes untenable for an increasing proportion of the human population. Now, when you think 1/3 of the population already doesn't have access to clean water, half of the population, or almost half, about 3 billion people, live on the equivalent of $5 a day or less. And if you and almost 1/3 of the population lives in big cities and is going to move to 2/3 probably in 25 years or so. Put all of these things together, and you say there's just no way that increasing the number, hundreds if not thousands of millions of people can survive. What happens then? What happens to his HIV, AIDS? What happens to all the other major epidemics? What happens to migrations? You know, what happens to the entire system that's so delicately balanced right now, and that you can shake up in a country like Afghanistan that most people didn't know it existed. I certainly didn't know where it was. Right. And there's something is happening there, and the whole world is shaken up. You know? What happens? The people didn't know very much, I suppose, where Iraq was and what's the difference between Iraq and Iran before September 11th, you know, and Saddam and so on. You can't have a world running smoothly and surviving when an increasing portion of it is faced with survival problems. So that's why we need to think in terms that are adequate to this changed situation.
So we're here at the Parliament of World Religions, where we've got all the traditions of the ages gathered together in their current forms, theoretically to look at, the world we're in and how we're going to move forward. How do you feel that the religious traditions are responding to the crisis you just laid out? Are they going to be a source of the kind of thinking that you just expressed? Do they need to change to meet the demand, and if so, how?
Well, it's really a two-part question. Will they, or do they need to?
Yeah.
I don't know whether they will. Because even if religious leaders who are represented here have the will to dialogue, and have the will perhaps to come into a common denominator, find a common spirituality, that doesn't mean that the large masses of followers of given religions will go in that direction. They could. You see. But it calls for a major change in consciousness, and religions is one part of that. Certainly the roots of religion have a common spirituality. Every religion is founded in the idea of being part of a community. Now, this community got in the period of centuries in the space and time of development, got delimited to us and them, and that's a tragic mistake, because you can say yes, we are searching for a common road to understanding, for enlightenment, but we may be searching in different ways. Our paths could converge. But in the meanwhile, to say that only my path is valid and you are making dreadful mistakes and you are heathen or pagans or whatever, it's divisive. And this is part of the divisions that we have in the world. So certainly, the need is there to change. Whether the change will occur in time, that only time will tell. But certainly we must try. We must try, and the effort here, the attempt to bring together representatives of different religions to a dialogue is a well worthwhile attempt.
Do you feel that the traditions, they're equipped in their current forms to meet, in a sense, the radical evolutionary demands of our time? Or do we need a new religion of some sort, a new spirituality of the future?
Religions have a problem in the sense that there is a spirit of the religions and then there is the word or the doctrine of the religions. Now, the spirit has originally inspired the doctrines, but often in the hundreds and thousands of years that have elapsed, the spirit has vanished or has been put in the background, and the doctrine lives, and it can become dry. And so we need, in a way, to go back to the roots, to go back to the origins. The spirit that inspired the different religions is a spirit of belonging, expressed through love, expressed through being part of a cosmos, different from the Eastern religions, different in the monotheistic Western religions, but it's always there, a sense of belonging to a large whole. And that, I think, is an important insight, which is contrary to modern science, only in a sense that modern science is antiquated. To the latest developments in contemporary science, it's no longer contrary. I tried in my latest writings to show that there are many commonalities between the ancient insights and the latest development in the sciences, in the sense that all emerge together, all are coherent with one another, all things are coherent with one another, all have a joint destiny, basically. Of course, many things can disappear. That doesn't mean that every species survives. 99% of the multicellular complex species since the Cambrian revolution 600 million years ago are extinct. Doesn't mean that humanity will not become extinct, but we have a conscious mind, therefore we can perhaps direct our own destiny, make use of our conscious mind. But coherence is there, the oneness of the universe is there. And the latest developments, which to my mind are particularly important, and it has been my main work in research work in the past 15 years or so, is to look into the fact that coherence is actually through a kind of an internet, if you like. It's communicated. It's communicated in nature. In other words, what is happening in one part influences instantly what is happening in other parts. This is known as non-locality in physics, but we find that it's in the body not only biochemical information moves, you know, when you do something with the body in one part, it's not just biochemistry that affects the other part. Instantly, all other cells are affected by whatever happens to one cell or one group of cells. And same thing with minds. What happens to one mind or one set of minds affects others as well. So there is a kind of a cosmic internet, if you like, which was probably the source of the religious prophetic insights. The great prophets have been able to communicate with this information field.
So you were just bringing up that we live in a time when spirituality and science are more and more again starting to find common ground.
The leading edge of spirituality is the leading edge of science.
Yeah, good.
Yes.
How do you think the traditions, do you feel they have something to learn from science? Do you feel they need to accommodate a more scientific worldview, and how might that change them?
That may be my bias, but my answer is certainly yes. I think as a scientist, I believe in science, but I've written recently a little article which will be published in Zygon, which is entitled "Why I Believe in Science and Believe in God." You know, I don't think it's mutually exclusive. What science tells us is what I believe, but what science tells us is such a remarkable universe that could not have been arisen purely by chance. It's not an accidental universe. It's an evolving, coherently evolving universe where consciousness is an integral part. And all this recalls the insights of religion.